you're listening to the One Idjit's Thoughts on podcast. I am Paul Mackey. Well, I don't know what to say about the pace of progress now that Dog Days is over and I went over 2 weeks before the next episode release. It's probably better for everyone, myself included, if I don't pay too much attention and just have some fun. Speaking of fun, 2 weekends back, Darcy and I saw the Fantastic Four First Steps at the theater downtown, and the next afternoon, Darcy and I saw Superman at that same theater with Fox and his girlfriend. We very much enjoyed both movies, and especially in an actual theater setting. Trivia that Monday was interesting. The Vikings were playing Monday Night Football versus the Bears, so the majority of our team was watching the game, and Darcy was a little bit under the weather, so I was solo. I joined up with another team and helped get to first place at the half and second place overall. Then, after trivia, there was plenty of time for me to walk down the street to the neighboring bar where my usual trivia team and I watched the second half of the football game. And at trivia a couple of days ago, 2 members of the team that I joined the previous week were without other players, so they joined us. And we together were first at the half and first in the end, though only by a half point. Well, let's get into the podcast today, starting with the Rockford Files, Season 2, Episode 5, The Deep Blue Sleep, originally aired October 10th, 1975. That day of note, I haven't seen very many films by Ken Russell, so I don't really know whether Listomania is significant in his filmography. In any case, this was the premiere date. Roger Daltrey plays the titular composer. The cast also includes Rick Wakeman as Thor and Ringo Starr as the Pope, along with Nell Campbell, who had also starred in another rock musical film which premiered 2 weeks earlier called The Rocky Horror Picture Show, which apparently had better legs than Listomania. Also, this date marked the remarriage of Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. This was the 6th of 8 marriages for her, similar but not as amusing as Billy Martin's managing career as recounted during the Last Seeing Things episode. On to the box office for October 8th, 1975, and Liz wasn't in any of these movies. Number 5 was the filmed theater experience Give 'Em Hell, Harry. Number 4, Part 2, Walking Tall. Number 3 was the previous week's number 1, Love and Death by Woody Allen. Number 2 was Jaws, still way up there, but kept out of number 1 by new release The Master Gunfighter. This film stars and was directed by Tom Laughlin after the success of his Billy Jack movies. While it opened at number 1 this week, it was critically panned and only screened for a total of 12 days. Across the pond, according to the official Charts Company archives, the top 5 singles were number 5, Una Paloma Blanca by Jonathan King, number 4, I'm on Fire by 5000 Volts, with some early disco electronic fun. Number 3 was There Goes My First Love by the Drifters. Number 2 was Art Garfunkel with I Only Have Eyes for You. And number 1, once again, was David Essex with Hold Me Close. On the U.S. Billboard Hot 100, things shook up a little bit after last time. Jefferson Starship came up to number 5 with their track Miracles. Dickie Goodman went to number 4 with Mr. Jaws. David Bowie's Fame came down to number 3. Number 2 was John Denver, I'm Sorry, in its same spot as last week. And Neil Sedaka hit number 1 with backing vocals from Elton John on the single Bad Blood. So this episode, the summary. Beth Davenport's childhood friend Margot calls Jim in the dead of night but immediately hangs up. We see her in fear for her life. Beth calls Jim the next day, fearing Margot may have fallen victim to foul play. Jim investigates and even breaks his rule about investigating open cases when Beth promises to represent him pro bono if he should run afoul of the law in pursuit of the case, which has sadly become a murder investigation. He follows the lead to the fashion design firm that employed Margot as a model. Margot was carrying on an affair with Mr. Coleman, the money man behind designer Adrienne Clark. It turns out Adrienne Clark, a black female business owner, had been preyed upon by mob interests, and her company was being used to launder money for the mob through a company called Macklin. Coleman tells Adrienne he's selling her company and her own services to the highest bidder. As it turns out, Coleman committed the cardinal sin of money laundering. He kept a paper record of the transactions involved. Rockford suggests it was Margot who might have first discovered the records and maybe even stole them, making her a target for murder. Coleman winds up dead, hit at his own home. Adrienne is snatched by Mr. Macklin, and Rockford puts them on a wild goose chase at Coleman's house looking for a secret safe. Jim tails them back to the warehouse where they are holding Adrienne and calls Sergeant Becker, but he decides to commandeer a police cruiser to buy time until Becker and his crew can arrive. Later, after all the dust settles, Beth and Jim visit Adrienne, who is now running her own shop with no mob backers anywhere.
This is Jim Rockford. At the tone, leave your name and message. I'll get back to you.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for the dinner invitation. I'd love to, but does it have to be the taco stand?
Who is? I took note of several guest stars this time. Early in the episode, Adrienne's assistant was Robert Hayes, about 3 years off from shooting Airplane. I also took note of Robert Webber playing the conniving Coleman, as he later went on to play Mr. Alexander Hayes, father to Maddie, on Moonlighting. He makes 2 more Rockford appearances and multiple Moonlighting ones, so we'll get back to him for a Who Is in the future. I never watched much Hill Street Blues, but I understand Michael Conrad from this episode is a significant part of that series. I want to look at writer and eventual producer Juanita Bartlett, who wrote the teleplay for this episode and wrote the Farnsworth Stratagem, among many other episodes. Juanita Bartlett was born in 1927 in San Francisco and was raised for the first 10 years of her life in Hawaii. She attempted writing for magazines and then wrote for a radio interview program. She settled into secretarial and office management positions while continuing to write in her spare time. Eventually, she broke into writing for television, writing 5 episodes of James Garner's single-season western Nichols in the 71-72 season. Juanita joined the staff on the Rockford Files from the beginning, initially responsible for the teleplays, before moving strictly into writing credits. She eventually also worked as producer on the show, starting with the final episode of Season 5 through the end of truncated Season 6. She continued work with Stephen Cannell on 10 Speed and Brown Shoe the next season as co-executive producer for 10 episodes and writing 3, then on to Greatest American Hero, again as co-executive producer and writer. She then moved into production work on Scarecrow and Mrs. King before forming her own production company in 1986 and producing the 2nd season of Spencer for Hire, before co-producing all of In the Heat of the Night along with Fred Silverman and MGM Television. When the Rockford Files TV movies were made starting in 1994, she was producer or executive producer on all 8 movies. Juanita Bartlett passed away in 2014 at age 86 of undisclosed causes. Artifactoids. I was never in a region of the country served by Shopping Bag Grocery Company in any of its forms, but it stood out as easily identifiable, so I had a quick look at the brand history. The first Shopping Bag Grocery was opened on Wilshire Boulevard in 1930, and they subsequently opened a supermarket in 1933. The company first became publicly traded in 1954 and was a healthy 38 stores in 1960 when rival brand Vons came calling. A merger made the combined company the 2nd largest on the West Coast. However, the merger was contested, and in 1966 the Federal Trade Commission compelled a sell-off, and the next year E.F. McDonald bought the chain, adding 31 L.A. stores from the A&P and rebranding them Shopping Bag shortly afterwards before selling the lot to Fisher's of Cleveland, Ohio. The stores became Fazio's Shopping Bag for a time, but in 1978 Albertsons bought and rebranded all the stores. The Rockford Files Filming Locations blog shows the location from the episode became a Roger Dunn's golf shop for a time, and is presently a CVS pharmacy location. So what worked in this episode? The case was interesting, and while Adrienne Clark was a victim of the mob, I felt she was portrayed as a strong and independent woman. I especially appreciated the epilogue showing she was bouncing back from the setback of losing her design firm. Unlike the vague explanation of money laundering from the episode Roundabout last season, I think this episode did a great job of explaining what money laundering actually is. What didn't work? I didn't really feel like there was a lot of mystery in the episode. It kind of went straight forward from A to B to C. It was fun, but I didn't see a lot that needed puzzling out. So next time is the Rockford Files Season 2, Episode 6, The Great Blue Lake Land and Development Company. A real mouthful. But next up in this podcast is Whiz Kids Episode 17, Altaira, after these messages.
Jaws. 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 Jaws is the game where you try to fish out what's in the jaws of the great white shark.
I'm going for the camera. Made it.
But be careful, because if you remove the wrong piece, the jaws will get you. You're out. Jaws. It's you against the great white shark and each other from Ideal.
Denim by Jordache.
So first up in that break was Ideal Toys' Jaws game. I do not recall this game personally, but of course I was 2.5 years old or so when it came out. Jaws was obviously the media property of the year at that point, so a great choice for a game. And then, getting you in the spirit of the 80s for Whiz Kids was a little something from Jordache. I don't know if the Jaws game would have been aired during an episode of the Rockford Files, but it was from that year of broadcast. I feel certain Jordache would have been a good fit to air during this episode of Whiz Kids, and could have been, for all I know. It was from 1984 in any case. Right, so this episode today is Whiz Kids Episode 17, Altaira. First aired April 28th, 1984. Originally aired April 28th, 1984. That day of note, not to be a downer, but the only significant event I found was the passing of Count Basie. I don't have a smooth transition to the charts, so I'll just go awkwardly to the charts. I looked at the video game chart in Billboard for the week ending April 28th, 1984, and it's mostly the same stuff that was on the list when I first found these Billboard issues have video games listed. Number 5 was Centipede in its 57th week on the chart. Number 4 was Congo Bongo. Number 3 was Q*bert, and number 2, Pole Position. Both Q*bert and Pole Position had been on the chart for 37 weeks. Number 1 was a newcomer to the chart, hitting number 1 for the first time after 3 weeks on the chart, and that game was Pitfall 2, exclusively on the Atari 2600. At the box office, Splash was number 5. Number 4 was the laughably titled Friday the 13th, Part 4, The Final Chapter. Number 3 was Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, Lord of the Apes. Number 2 was Romancing the Stone. And number 1 was Police Academy. We're close to the end of this series, so I'm going to change up the music charts a little bit because, well, I can. So for the UK this time, I'm going to look at the NME. The closest issue to this date that I can find access to is April 7th, and their chart for independent singles has these top 5 listings. Number 5 was R.I.P. by Alien Sex Fiend. Number 4 was Song to the Siren by This Mortal Coil. Number 3 was What Difference Does It Make by The Smiths. Number 2, People Are People by Depeche Mode. And number 1 was You're Already Dead by Crass. I looked for the closest CMG New Music report to match up with this show, and I found the April 9th issue. And this is off the New Music Composite Singles chart, based off radio airplay, club play, and sales numbers. Number 5 there was Echo and the Bunnymen with The Killing Moon, my personal favorite by them. Number 4 was The Go-Go's with Head Over Heels. Number 3 was The Sex Execs with My Ex. Number 2 was Frankie Goes to Hollywood with Relax, and number 1 was In Excess with Original Sin. I listened to all 10 of these songs, and it's a pretty diverse bunch of songs. I had to hit YouTube to find the Sex Execs song. Apparently they were a Boston band and self-released the single after they were in a radio station competition in 1983, where they defeated the Del Fuegos in the semifinal round, but wound up coming second overall to Till Tuesday. A brief summary of the episode: Richie and Farley meet a senator's daughter, Laura Calhane, as they try to save a local park from being bulldozed by NASCorp to build a military tank factory. A man working on the project reveals to her there is a major flaw with the tank's trajectory computer. She gets Farley to work on the story, and Farley gets Richie's help. However, the man turned out to have leaked them a false story so the company could discredit both Farley and Laura. Richie falls in love with Laura over the course of the episode and finds he must wrestle with the new emotional ties as opposed with the disturbing truths and suspicions about Laura's father and the corporation. Richie discovers information that leads the head of the project to have Richie eliminated. In the end, the true story comes out. Richie is safe, and so is his relationship with Laura. And my favorite line in this episode?
Oh, Richie. Love can make us all a little bit crazy sometimes. Most of us survive, though.
All right, the Who Is query. Well, as I mentioned when profiling Scott Brady for the last Rockford Files episode before today, here he is as the villainous Mr. Keller. He was ailing at this time. I'm sure this might be his final role, though Gremlins would release later in the summer of 1984. I'm going to have a look this time, though, at guest star and love interest Tammy Taylor. Tammy Taylor was born in 1958 in Southern California, and she worked in theater as well as the TV and motion picture industry. Her early IMDb credits include some late 70s beach movies and shows like Happy Days, Chips, and 8 is Enough. She worked a few episodes of The Young and the Restless in 1980 and followed that on Days of Our Lives in 1982 and 1983. Around the same time as Whiz Kids, she also appeared in a minor role in Meatballs 2. Yeah, the one with the alien. After a small role in Mr. Belvedere in 1989 and the birth of her eldest daughter, Tammy left acting and focused on her family with photographer and graphic designer Glenn Wexler. With 2 kids in their 20s, Tammy returned to acting mostly in shorts and web series according to IMDb, and she is also a member of Theater West, the oldest continually operating theater in the Los Angeles area. Tammy Taylor was 26 when she got the role of Laura Calhane in this episode, playing opposite 17-year-old Matthew as Richie. Forgotten TV interviewed her about the situation. She was advised by her agent to say that she was 20 years old if asked, and then when she was called back to audition against Matthew, the producers told her he'd be uncomfortable working with an older actress like her 20-year-old self, and she should pretend to be 18. The whole story and its denouement is recounted in Forgotten TV's episode 33 entitled Whiz Kids Part 1. Totally 80s. In many scenes of this episode, you see wireframe models of the tank in question drawing in element by element. It looked pretty cool at the time, but that was probably the only reason that we see it at all. In-universe, there might be wireframe CAD models of the tank in use. They'd likely have an extra diagram of data of some sort making the images useful, instead of just drawing in to look cool, wouldn't they? Well, maybe at the press conference they might put it up to look cool, but at the Athena Society I don't think there'd be a reason to put one up just for show. So what worked? I can see that watching in airing order is going to work against me here, and I guess for anyone closely following the show back then as well, I suppose. The show was ending, even though they had not yet gotten that final word. They had Richie fall in love and gave him a happy ending, and then there was one more episode shot but not aired from the first half of the season, and suddenly all of that will be gone. But in this one, it's nice that they wrapped up with Richie getting the girl. What didn't work? Pacing of the episode seemed a bit off. I think they were probably at the end of their budgetary rope. They couldn't build to an episode climax of a wacky madcap chase like earlier in the season, not that this episode necessarily called for one. But while suggesting Richie might be in danger, the actual end of it was him cutting across traffic on his bike in a solitary car stunt to wrap up the mortal peril part of the storyline. And then the rest of the storyline wrapped up in a little exposition at the end. It definitely felt on the verge of incomplete with a quick, pat ending. Before I tell you what the next episode is, I'll again point you toward Forgotten TV podcast, where I found that extra detail about Tammy Taylor's appearance on the show. I've tried to get you a good look at the series as I go, but Chris Cooling is definitely a Whiz Kids superfan, an expert that I recommend checking out his work for the more comprehensive look at the series and many other television series throughout time. Next time is what became the series wrap, Whiz Kids Episode 18, May I Take Your Order Please, which is also a bit of a flashback, as I've said before, and will elaborate on once more next time. Happy hunting! You've been listening to the One Idjit's Thoughts On podcast, produced by Paul Mackey in association with Nimlas Studios. Any short clips of audio from shows is included under fair use for commentary purposes, and copyright for that content remains with its original copyright holders. The theme song is Too Good by Jack Mangan and is used by his generous permission. One Idjit's Thoughts is produced under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. You can find more episodes of this podcast and many other fine podcasts at nimlas.org. You can contact me by emailing idjitcastpodcast@gmail.com or commenting on episodes at nimlas.org. So, Richie gets a girlfriend, and Jeremy suddenly just has a girlfriend. Does that leave Ham and Alice paired like they teased earlier in the season? I guess in a few years she gets, much bigger hair and a furry alien friend. So, yeah.